Hi folks, welcome to another video by the brilliant expat Taffy. Another video that's going to hammer more nails in the coffin of NASA's fake moon landings. Now, you all know the story. In the 60s and the 70s, NASA claimed to have landed men on the moon. But as we know today, it was completely fake. They don't have the technology to do it today, so it is impossible to have the technology to do it 50 years ago. Now, before we start, let me all give you a question to ask. Why is it that NASA is the only organization in the world that has to pay out millions of dollars every year to paid shills to convince the world of its acclaimed achievements? Nobody else does that, only NASA. Now, there must be a reason for it. Now, despite the fact there are thousands of videos on YouTube proving that NASA faked these landings and that nobody has ever left Earth orbit and nobody has ever landed on the moon, there are still many that remain adamant that they did go. Now, all those who believe NASA went to the moon, when you ask them for any positive, irrefutable evidence that they did go, there are 2 points that they all stuck to. They claim they had 2 pieces of evidence that they landed on the moon. Now, one of them was, if they didn't go, if they faked it, then Russia would have spilled the beans. Russia would have told the world, hey, NASA, you faked it. That's one of their main pieces of evidence they claim proves that NASA landed men on the moon. Now, folks, the only other piece of irrefutable evidence these NASA nutters claim they have is the laser reflectors, which they claim are placed on the moon. They state if they never went, who placed these laser reflectors on the moon? As you can see, it's right in the center of this photo here. And we've had those nutters, mythbusters, have been claiming that these laser reflectors are genuine and on the moon. Well, if you've watched the videos of the brilliant expat Taffy, the brilliant expat Taffy has proven there are no laser reflectors on the moon whatsoever. And the next photo coming up is 100% proof of that. And here it is, folks. The photo claimed that Neil Armstrong took on the moon of the LEM with the laser reflector in the center. As the brilliant expat Taffy has shown here, just brighten it up and look at the sky. The sky is obviously a black woven curtain, a cloth curtain of some kind. Look at the crisscross grids in it. And instead of stars, look what you've got. You've got green crosses. 100% fake, folks. Definitely not taken on the moon. So there you are. The brilliant expat Taffy has destroyed this piece of evidence with the laser reflectors and proved that it is not genuine and there are no laser reflectors on the moon. So what this video is going to be doing now is to disprove their claim that Apollo landed on the moon because the Russians never spilled the beans. What I'm going to give you is the real reason Russia never spilled the beans, despite the fact they knew America faked the landings. And let me tell you, folks, It's nothing to do with what Bart Sabrell said about the Russians were faking it just as much as the Americans were faking it. So they had an agreement. You don't split on us, we won't split on you. Nothing to do with that at all. And it's also nothing to do with what Marcus Allen states, that Russia relied on America for wheat to feed its population. It was nothing to do with that. I'm going to give you the real reason they never spilt the beans and why we never knew about it years ago. But now it's pretty obvious today what it is. Now just think, folks. With Bart Sabrell's explanation, one could say to him, that's just your theory, but have you got any proof of it? And no, he can't prove that that's the reason. And the same with Marcus. That's your theory, Marcus, but have you got proof of it? Have you got proof that Putin agrees that that's why they never spilled the beans? No. Those two explanations carry no proof whatsoever. But what I'm going to show you at the end of this video as to why they really didn't spill the beans, my explanation is going to contain proof. Proof of what has happened. Now, folks, for those who really want to know the real reason why Russia never spilled the beans, I'm going to have to ask you to be very patient with this video. Because it's no good me just giving you my explanation like Bart and Marcus did, because it'll be met with the same response, how do you know, or what's the proof you've got? What I'm going to ask you is please be very patient with this video, because what we've got to do first is take a look at what goes on behind closed doors with governments around the world. Something that a lot of you haven't got a clue about. Now, to start with, let's go back to the 60s, when this event is supposed to have taken place. Just what did we have in the 60s, folks? The 60s and the 70s, what did we have? As far as what was on the news, we had three sources. We had newspapers, we had radio, and we had TVs. That was all the sources of information on news we had. And what we didn't realize at the time is the only news that was put out on these three sources is what our governments wanted us to know. They never told us the full truth. They only told us what they wanted to know. That was their way of keeping control of populations in different countries. Now, today things are different. We've got the internet and we've got YouTube. And thanks to those two sources, we are now getting the truth. The truth that our governments don't want us to know. One example is 9/11. What the government wanted us to know was it was an attack by Osama bin Laden. But now we know, thanks to YouTube, that it was an inside job, a government-operated job. Now, all of you know that at the time, following 9/11, we were led to believe that Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction. And we even had the British Prime Minister, Tony Blair, wanting to join America in invading Iraq. And the man was a liar. He even stated, "I have seen the evidence." Despite the fact that after they invaded, as you all know, there was no weapons of mass destruction discovered anywhere. So let me ask you, folks, Why do you think a British Prime Minister would tell lies stating that he has seen the evidence of these weapons of mass destruction? And why would he then join America and invade Iraq in what was later described as an illegal war? The man should be charged with war crimes. The man should be charged with murder because many thousands of people lost their lives because of his lies. But why did he do it? Are any of you aware of why he done it? Okay, folks, take a look at this photo here now. Now, what I want you to do to get up this photo is all plot into Google. Just plot in "de-notice Gordon Brown" and you'll get this page coming up here. Now, for all those who are not aware of what it is these children here are children from a school in Scotland called Dunblane. What it was is 16 of these kids, these children, were supposed to have been murdered by a lone gunman, a nutcase with a few guns, and he just indiscriminately went into the school and shot 16 children. Now, for all of you not aware of the situation, Gordon Brown, when he was Deputy Prime Minister of the UK, he was about to be charged with sexually molesting children. This would have been a great embarrassment to the UK and the British government. The Tony Blair's government would have had to resign. So, what Tony Blair done was he put a 100-year notice, a de-notice, on the evidence that would have convicted Gordon Brown. He now got to wait 100 years before he can face trial. Any of you aware of that? Now, folks, just look at the similarities we've had over the last 60 years. We had a nutcase, a lone gunman, Lee Harvey Oswald, killed John F. Kennedy. We had a lone gunman, a nutcase, killed John Lennon. And then there was supposed to be a lone gunman, a nutcase, killed Jill Dando. And then recently we had another case where it's supposed to be a lone gunman killed a Labour MP. And now we've got this lone gunman, a nutcase, just indiscriminately shooting kids at a school in Scotland. Now, the word here is murdered, but a more fitting word for these children would have been silenced. Yes, silenced, folks, deliberately silenced. Now, instead of me wasting too much time on all these pages of this report, I suggest you download the lot of them, bring them up, I'll provide the link, and thoroughly read through them, and you'll be amazed at the information we've got here. Now, just think of this lone gunman. It doesn't make sense when you examine the facts. They claim this lone gunman had more than one gun. Now, why would he need more than one? And he's supposed to have shot himself after killing these kids. Now, one of the facts about this certain lone gunman is he couldn't buy any guns because he did not have a license. An amazing thing is, Tony Blair's Foreign Secretary, Mr. Robinson, persuaded the police to give this gunman a license so that he could purchase the guns. Now, don't you think that's very strange? Now, the way I look at this case is, after this man silenced all these 16 children, he's supposed to turn the gun on himself and killed himself. But I wouldn't be surprised if he just fired a blank at himself fell to the floor, was carried off by the police, then given a new identity, a new passport, and a wad of notes, and a ticket to another place in the world. Now, upon reading this report, what you'll find is the true facts. These children at this school were being sexually molested by many MPs in the Labour Party, Tony Blair's government. And they'd been molested for years. But as they were growing up, they then started recognising those that were molesting them on the TV. And they were starting to talk. So they had to be silenced. They had to be silenced, folks. And that's why they all got murdered. Now, what you'll find in this report is the FBI in America knew about these kids murdered, and they know why they were murdered, it's stated. And what it is claimed there, that the FBI issued a warning to Tony Blair. And that warning was, join us in Iraq or we bring down your government. You see, it was used as a blackmailing card, a Trump blackmailing card. Now this is what goes on behind closed doors with all governments when they're discussing foreign policy with other governments. It's not an amicable discussion like you and I think it is. There is hard bargaining, and there is a lot of blackmail going on. And that is what the FBI is claimed to have used here. So that's the first step, folks. After reading all that, studying it carefully, not my words, you will see why Tony Blair lied to the British public and took us into an illegal war alongside America. Now, folks, the amount of text in this article is too great for me to get it all into this video. It'll make the video too long. So all I'm going to do is crop out some important sections, enable you to read what is most important, like I've done here. In the early months of 2003, just prior to the illegal invasion of Iraq, and working in conjunction with a London-based freelance journalist who had thoroughly double-checked exposures published by the Scottish Sunday Herald newspaper, I published details of a child sex ring linked to senior ministers within the Blair government. Okay, here's the next section, and what I've done here, I've taken out the most important part and enlarged it to enable you to read it off the screen. There you are. There it is there. Okay, here's the next section coming up, and again I'll crop out the most important part of that so that you can read it. Here it is coming cropped and enlarged. There you are, you can read that there. Now, like I said, I can't waste too much time on every paragraph from this article. I suggest you download it or you view it through the link provided in the pre-report and study it all the way through. That will give you a good insight into what happens behind closed doors with our governments. Not just our government in the UK, but governments abroad as well. It gives you a good insight into the activity that goes along. Now folks, my next step in providing irrefutable evidence as to why Russia never spilled the beans when America faked the landings, I want you to take a look at just a small clip from another very good video concerning paedophiles in government. This video is titled Savile and the Ninth Circle. I'll leave a link in the pre-report. Okay folks, I'm going to cut that there now, and we're going to skip ahead to another very important part of this video. As you can see here, the voice, the man here describing what happens is Bill Maloney. He's a child abuse victim. He remembers the days when he was a young boy in a care home.
We are now
and
looking at
very often he was falling asleep
tapes or a
because he'd
tape
been drugged.
that has been
And he
hidden
states
for many years
whenever he woke up,
by the
it
government,
was
secret
always the same.
services, whoever,
He always had a
Leon
sore
Britton abusing
anus.
young boys.
Now
So
I wonder
it
if
isn't just
Bertie
Tony
Slacker
Blair's
actually did
government,
that.
it's Margaret Thatcher's government. And Leon Britton, I'll say it again, was a regular visitor to Elm Guest House at the same time as Gary Walker, who was heavily a leader of Sinn Féin and the IRA, while bombs were going off on the streets of this country. I'm sorry, I'm getting angry now. While bombs were going off on the streets in this country, and people were being accused of this and that, while these two, our Home Secretary and the leader...
Now, what we're going to do now, we're going to skip ahead in this video to a section where you will hear a retired barrister talking to Bill Maloney here. And you will see from what he has got to say, it will start to become clear why Russia never spilled the beans on Apollo. Let's take a listen to what he's got to say.
Another story, and the Jimmy Savile sex scandal at the BBC and with the police is rumbling on. 7 times apparently the police let Jimmy Savile off. That's the headlines of many of the newspapers today. But this was raised on Wednesday by Tom Watson in the House of Commons at Prime Minister's Questions. And if you listen carefully, you can hear a lot of the Conservative people at the very beginning when Tom Watson stands up to speak, making sort of animal noises at him. But anyway, let's hear what he had to say.
Watson. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The evidence file used to convict paedophile Peter Wrighton, if it still exists, contains clear intelligence of a widespread paedophile ring. One of its members boasts of his links to a senior aide of a former Prime Minister, who says he could smuggle indecent images of children from abroad. The leads were not followed up. But if the files still exist, I want to ensure that the Metropolitan Police secure the evidence, re-examine it, and investigate clear intelligence suggesting a powerful paedophile network linked to Parliament and Number 10.
But the most prominent paedophile associated with the Savile ring was a man called Edward Heath, who you may recall was Prime Minister and took us into the EEC. Heath was into little boys, and Savile was supplying them. A number of these boys were taken out of the Haute de Garenne home in Jersey. Savile was taking children from a children's home with the support of German assets in Jersey. What was happening was that children's homes in the Channel Islands, particularly Haute de Garenne in Jersey, children were being taken from these homes, boys in the case of Edward Heath, as he was gay, and a paedophile, were being taken onto his yacht, the Morning Cloud. Savile was actually going out he went down to Jersey, and he was actually taking boys. There was another man involved as well, but Savile himself took boys from the children's home, where he was a guest, or welcome, onto the boat. So he was taking boys out onto Morning Cloud. Now, since Heath was well known, and since the boys were talking young men, the boys were murdered and thrown off the boat. That's why the BBC and the Cabinet Office have been so keen to protect Savile. That's why the Cabinet Office in the 1980s were willing to back Savile to the point of giving him a position of authority at Broadmoor, which is an absolute, you don't put a paedophile in charge of Broadmoor. The Cabinet Secretary at the time, who thankfully is no longer with us, Hunt, was also a paedophile, was in on this, met Savile. He was Catholic, met Savile, as did that very nice man, the late Archbishop of Westminster, Cardinal Basil Hume. Basil was not a paedophile, but knew Hunt and had a shrewd idea. He wasn't stupid. He had a shrewd idea of what had been going on, and I've no doubt was told to keep a lid on it. Hunt was in on it, so the Cabinet Secretary at the time was in on it, was aware of what was going on, was aware he had a Prime Minister who was involved not just in abusing young boys, but was murdering them as well. It's quite possible that there was a crewman on the yacht who did the actual murder. I'm not saying Heath necessarily bashed the boys on the boko and tossed them overboard. He may have had somebody do that for him, but he was certainly guilty of murder under English law as an accessory or on the joint enterprise basis. Oh, if someone is inclined in that direction and you can supply them with boys, then you've got a hold on them, or girls. There's nothing worse for a politician than being exposed in the murder and sexual abuse of young people. And if you've got a politician who is abusing and killing young girls and boys, but boys or girls, then you've got a hold on them. Paedophilia is a wonderful means if you're a hostile intelligence agency of blackmailing politicians. The reason it's particularly disgusting, quite aside from the element of sexual abuse and coercion and corruption of young people, that's disgusting in and of itself. But what makes it particularly vile, and we saw this in the Madeleine McCann case, and that's why the Madeleine McCann case was so heartbreaking and tragic, if the children are, and I'm afraid with paedophilia we sometimes have babies being abused, but if you're not talking babies, if you're talking toddlers who are able to recognize the people who are abusing them, since the people, there's absolutely no point doing it unless the politician is high profile, since you're talking about people who are on television, people who are high profile, you have to murder the children in order to protect your asset. So for the Germans, it was essential that the boys that were being taken onto the yacht, that was a death ride. When Jimmy Savile was taking, let's say, a 14-year-old boy down to Morning Cloud, handing him over to Heath or a member of the crew on the yacht, it was a death ride. That was that boy's last journey on Earth.
Now folks, before we go any further, I hope you can understand what I'm trying to get over to you. I'm trying to get you to understand what goes on behind closed doors between governments when they are having certain discussions. It's not amicable discussions like you and I would imagine. It can be very, very dirty politics, nasty politics, folks, as you've seen here with this Dunblane case. Tony Blair was blackmailed by Bush and the FBI. Join us in Iraq or we bring down your government. And what you can also see now, you've just seen about Germany using blackmail to get their way with discussions with the UK. And a typical example of Germany negotiating with the British government is what's going on now, and that is discussions for Brexit. For those not aware, it's now 26 months ago that we voted to leave the EU, and after 26 months we are no nearer leaving today than we was on the day we had that referendum. And why is that? Because there cannot be fair and open discussions with a leader of another country who's got a gun to your head, accept our deal or we bring down your government. There's a typical example with the British and the German negotiations on Brexit, folks. So, folks, what's the next thing? Well, the next thing we're going to look at is what goes on between Russia and America. Now, take a look at this. An article by Russia. Did NASA really land on the moon? Russia wants probes into missing video and lunar rock. Did any of you see that in the news not so long ago? Russia wants a probe into the missing video and lunar rock. Now, take a look at this part of the report. Vladimir Markin, a former spokesman for the government's official investigative committee, said the committee had called for an inquiry to find out what happened to the original footage of the first moon landing in '69 and also lunar rock brought back to Earth during the several missions. The next part of the report, he said, "We are not contending that they did not fly to the moon and simply made a film about it, but all of these scientific or perhaps cultural artifacts are part of the legacy of humanity, and their disappearance without a trace is our common loss. An investigation will reveal what happened." US media has speculated that the call is no more than a smear since the US brought about the downfall of FIFA's leadership following its corruption inquiry. This was because, in an article for Russian newspaper Izvestia, Mr. Marking said US authorities had crossed a line by launching a large-scale corruption probe targeting 9 FIFA officials. He argued this lay the US open to scrutiny of its own actions due to the high number of conspiracy theories that the moon landing videos were fake due to one of the flags having no shadow and blowing in the wind, despite there being no atmosphere and no other anomalies. Now, folks, a number of things to note with this Russian request. Don't you think that it's too coincidental that it was called for right after America launched an investigation into the doping of Russian footballers? And another thing, don't you think that if they've got any suspicions as to whether the lunar landings were genuine, and they do indicate suspicions by mentioning a flag blowing and no shadow, why wait 49 years to ask for an investigation? And another thing, if, as you all say, Russia and America were both in a race to conquer space, they were both competitors. Don't you think that America would have the right to say to Russia, "Look here, Apollo was our project, we designed it, we paid for it, we went, and it's piss all to do with you. If we want to burn the tapes, they're our tapes, we'll burn them, and we won't need your permission to do so. So as far as your investigation into Apollo, you can get lost. There will be no investigation." Now, don't you think Obama had the right to say that to Russia, folks? Well, did he? No, he did not. Now, another thing about this Russian demand for a probe. let me ask all of you, have you seen any investigation being carried out? Is there a probe going on into the missing tapes? No. I haven't seen anything in the news at all about it. So what happened to it? It looks like, folks, it's died a death because it served its purpose. The words by Russia, "We want a probe into the missing video and lunar rock," is just a smokescreen. What it is, it's other words for Russia saying to America, you go ahead with this probe anymore into our doping, and we will tell the world that you faked the moon landings. That's what it is, folks. It was firing a shot across America's bows, warning them, we can still tell the world that you faked the moon landings. Now, they couldn't use those words, could they? Because the tale would be out. Everybody will know, hey, Russia's admitting America faked the landings. They couldn't use those words. So they had to use other words. The words they used, we want an investigation into the missing tapes. It sent the message, and it done the job, folks. It served Russia well. So there you are, folks. Just think of it, back in '69, Russia knew America had faked the landings. And what would they have got if they told the world, no, you never went, you faked it? What would Russia have gained from it? All they would have gained is a bit of pride that we beat you, you didn't beat us. But by keeping it quiet and not exposing the American fakery, they gained something a lot more valuable, folks. They gained a valuable trump card, a blackmailing ID card that they've used for the last 50 years. And they've most probably used it 20, 40, 60 times maybe in all arguments, discussions and disputes with America. And it'd have won Russia a lot more than it would have by just exposing the fakery. And I'll give you another example here. Now, I'm sure there's many of you out there that are now familiar with the practice of America of using false flags to start wars. You all remember when America waged war with Syria. But instead of attacking Syria, a normal full-scale war, they used what was termed ISIS. They claimed this ISIS were rebels fighting Assad, but actually they were paid mercenaries by Obama. ISIS was created by Obama as a backdoor method to overthrowing Assad. And Russia knew this, and so did many other people around the world. Now, when it looked like America was losing the war in Syria, do you remember Obama coming on the TV and warning Assad? He said, chemical weapons is a line we won't allow you to cross. If you use chemical weapons, we are coming in to take you out. And amazingly enough, only about a week later, chemical weapons were used. And Obama blamed it on Assad. But it was actually the rebels that set it off. Now, if any of you remember, if I remember rightly, it was on a Monday in the news that David Cameron was joining America, just like Tony Blair has been blackmailed into joining America on the attack in Iraq. David Cameron stated, we are with Obama, ready to invade Syria. Now, I think it was on a Monday. Obama stated, we go in on Thursday. But come Thursday, what did they do? They backed down. They didn't go in because Russia was saying we've got proof that Assad never used the chemical weapons. But you can bet that Putin for Russia also used this threat of, you go in there and we'll expose you as faking the moon landings. Come Thursday, Obama backed down. You see, that trump card has served Russia well. And thank God he's got it, because, for all we know, it may have more than one occasion prevented World War III. Okay folks, take a look what we've got here. I've got here a comment from one of the NASA nutcases that goes by the ID of Luke S. A more fitting ID, as far as I'm concerned, would be Luke Arse. What this idiot is nothing but a sock puppet for another mentally insane NASA nutcase, Cornelius Crew. And look what he states here. Rick Dawkins, thousands upon thousands of pictures as well as countless hours of video footage prove we went. And then he goes on to say, the fact that the Russians didn't call us out proves we went. So this idiot, like all the rest of them, they think because Russia never spilled the beans, then that's proof they landed on the moon. Now folks, you've all heard about the Cold War that went on for 30-40 years between Russia and America. Now, let me ask all of you. Now, if you was Putin, the ruler of Russia, what Putin would you rather be? Would you rather be the Putin of today, who's got this very, very successful Trump blackmailing card to use with all negotiations with America? Or would you rather be the Putin that Lucas and the others would rather be, whereby he would not have this Trump card because they flipped it over in '69. I knew, or shall I say, I know which Putin I would rather be. I'd rather be the one holding the Trump card. And that's what the Russians are doing, folks. They are holding the Trump card. It served them in the past, and it will serve them well into the future, until it all comes out, the truth comes out, and America is proven beyond doubt to have faked the landings. So folks, now you know why Russia never spilled the beans. The reason is they were a lot smarter than we all gave them credit for. No wonder they beat America with all the rocket designs. There you are folks, hope you enjoyed the video by the brilliant expat Taffy. Happy days from Thailand. Now, before we go any further, give expat Taffy a little wave on an elephant in Thailand. Now, up to now, I hope you can understand what I've been trying to get clear to you, and that is how discussions go on between different countries behind open doors. You've seen how the FBI used the blackmailing card of paedophilia to force Tony Blair to join America in the war against Iraq. And this trump card, this blackmailing trump card of paedophilia, is also used by Germany against the UK. Now, this is one thing that should be done in all governments, is pass a law that no paedophiles are allowed in government. Because while you've got paedophiles in government, that government cannot represent its own people, while they are subject to blackmail. And that's always been the case, as you've just heard that ex-barrister saying, with Germany and the UK. A typical case is, for all that are familiar with the UK at the moment, we've got negotiations going for Brexit. 2 years and 2 months ago, we had a referendum in the UK on whether to leave the EU or remain. And we voted to leave the EU. We wanted out. We wanted no part of it. But despite 2 years and 2 months of negotiations between Theresa May and Merkel in the German government, we are now no nearer to leaving the EU than we were 26 months ago. And there you can see the reason for that. Theresa May cannot represent the British people. She cannot deliver what she promised, while Merkel in Germany has got a gun to her head and threatening her, accept our deal or we'll expose the paedophiles in your government.